Hello and welcome to today's video on mastering the opposition, a crucial endgame tool that revolves around two kings in a staring contest, seeing who will blink first. And before we begin, do check out my video just down below here that examines the fundamentals of this process in the endgame. Without further ado, here we have this position with short opposition in green, where with one square between them, this is the foundation of opposition as I look at my other video, and whoever is to move here will lose ground. If it's white to play, as we will see, they will have to move backwards, and black will be able to progress forwards in some way. Now, this applies to medium opposition in yellow as well, where because it is an odd number of squares, and both kings, therefore, thanks to the geometry of the chessboard, are on the same coloured squares, dark squares here, whoever is to play here will liquidate down to the basic one square opposition. And likewise in blue, long opposition will also, because it's a 5 square distance between the two kings, will also boil down to the basic one square opposition. Let's see that in action. Of course, opposition is a means to an end, and here black wants to get to one of these 3 green squares. It's white to play, it is short opposition, therefore white is forced to go to the side one way or the other, and black will now progress forwards. White even briefly wins the opposition laterally, but black of course reaches their goal. And the same applies to medium opposition. There are 3 squares now, an odd number of course, the same coloured square for both kings, and now white can move forwards, black moves forwards, and you guessed it, it is short opposition once again, and white is forced to cave, and black will reach their goal. And the same applies for long opposition with 5 squares between the two kings, where once again, if white moves forwards, black moves forwards, we have medium opposition, and that translates to, once again, short opposition, and white is forced to cave, and black will reach their goal. Retreating to the starting moment here for long distance opposition, and we see that because they are on the same coloured square, the good rule of thumb is same coloured square on the same line, therefore an odd number, in this case 5 squares. We saw king b2, then king b6, once again, same coloured square to dark square, 3, and then king b3, king b5, and that's of course 1 square between them, and black is winning the opposition in all those cases, with white to play, caving to the side, and so black will break through to the back. Now, for example, if king c2, king b6 is actually a mistake, because white can, as we see here in blue, triangulate around. They took 2 moves to get to b2, and so that's 1, 2, 3, and now black is the one to move. Black can waste time, so can white, and they dance around here on the 6th and 2nd ranks here. Or if black ever steps forwards, white is ready to match them, and because it's now white who has just moved, black is to play. White bars the way forwards, black can go to the side, white could even outflank if they wanted to, or they can simply, for this exercise, block the path to the back rank. So if king to c2, king b6 is definitely wrong, and in fact king c6 maintains the opposition, and once again, king c3, king c5 maintains this 1 square opposition, same coloured square, and for example, if king b3, not king c5 on asymmetrical files there and asymmetrical colours. Instead, king b5, and once again, white is forced to move, and once again, black can make it to the back rank. For that reason, the only remaining question is, what if king a1? Well, of course, king a7 would maintain this opposition, because here, there's 5 squares between the two, and for example, if white moved up, black is ready to come here and match the opposition once again, and this would translate to exactly the same thing. But of course, after king a1, king a7, white can simply step to b1. If black comes up, then white is ready. That's a dark square, light square, so white can make it 2 dark squares, and once again, 1, 2, 3, it's now black to play, and we know this story already. It's now black to play with white barring the way, and black cannot break through. For that reason, after king a1, of course, there's the second process of outflanking. King a7 would not achieve anything. White would just simply mark time. Black would say, okay, I've got to come back to here or else you will win the opposition. White can continue marking time, and this is the point. Outflanking to c6. And because, as we see here, white is unable to come to c2, which would then win the aforementioned opposition here, black can outflank. And when white, for example, steps to b2, trying to come here, once again, remember the coloured squares, it is b6 that black must go to maintain the 3 squares. Of course, if they go to b5, white then makes it the same coloured square, and bars the way with one square on b4 in between, and this would be a draw again. For that reason, at this moment, king b6, and, well, if white steps forwards, black steps forwards and wins the opposition, and if white comes this way, black can simply outflank once more because white is unable to maintain opposition on this line. And so, for example, king b2, now we don't need to go to b5, we can indeed go to b4 because one square between them with the same coloured square. Let's put that to good use. Here we have an exercise with white to play. Of course they are winning, but the rook, for the purposes of this exercise, can only move once to checkmate that king. So we have to use the white king to triangulate around and force that king to h8. For example, if we achieved king g6, black's king will be forced to go sideways with this rook helping, and then the rook would come to f8 to checkmate. That's one move that would succeed. Of course, to get there is the hard part, and that's where the coloured squares really matter. By being on the same coloured square, there's 5 in red squares between the two kings, and with this rook on f1 blocking black's king coming here, it would be forced either to the side or forwards. Now, if not already apparent, coming forwards in opposition usually is not the way to go, because king g7, you guessed it, there's 4 squares and they're asymmetrically coloured, so king g3, 1, 2, 3, same coloured square. This would progress to short opposition, and after king h6, for example, or backwards, white can either progress forwards if king g7, king h7, or outflank with king f5. And because black is unable to come to f7 and maintain opposition, black is either forced forwards, which would lead to checkmate in 1, or backwards, and white maintains the opposition. And we see the aforementioned moment where king g6 forces black's king to h8 with mate. Now that's, of course, if directly forwards. However, what if, for example, king h8? And this is the critical moment. We have to outflank now. If we use king h2, which would maintain the opposition, again, opposition is a means to an end. It's a tool we can use or we cannot use depending on what we want. Of course, if black ever comes forwards, white, once again, medium opposition, same coloured square, 3 squares between them in blue, wins the opposition. But if black is sensible and plays king g8, the best white can do is king g2 and twofold. King h8, and black asks white the question, what are you going to do with the opposition? Well, white says, I will outflank. And because, again, they can't come to f7, white's king is going to make forwards progress one way or the other. If king g8, mindful of the coloured squares, king g4, 3 squares between them, same coloured square. And if king g7, not king g4, asymmetrically coloured, king g3 keeps with the colours and keeps the 3 squares between them. And once again, if they ever come forwards, it's not the best way, we come forwards ourselves. If they go to the side, we could maintain opposition, but this wouldn't actually achieve too much. So king f4 outflanks, forcing black's king to move. Again, if g7, king g5, and we've maintained opposition. And if king g6, king g4, before they get to f6, and then they're forced backwards once again. And if they try and come backwards, we continue outflanking. If they stay on the h-file, yes, they might be avoiding the so-called staring contest opposition, but of course they can't ever regain it themselves either. And as a result, whatever happens, prerequisite square of both colours will be reached by white, and we see that it will be checkmate, like so. Let's rehearse that one more time. A reminder, this rook can only move once. It covers the f-file, and so white simply needs to bring their king to g2, win the long opposition. Black cannot bring their king to the f-file. They must move either sideways or forwards. If they blunder forwards, as long as we move forwards like so and win the medium opposition, this will equate to short opposition win, and white will then outflank like so. And if they dare make the most tenacious defense of king h8, we do not play king h2, which would win the opposition, but actually wouldn't achieve too much, because then king g8, we have to go to g2, or else if we went forwards, they would triangulate forwards and have lost a move. And therefore, after king h8, we are asked the question, what to do? We outflank, of course, and at this moment, black cannot maintain the opposition, and the rest is simple. Continuing the same coloured square, maintaining the 3 squares between them, white will now force their way through either outflanking, triangulating in green, and the rest is trivial. We will force our king forwards, and one way or the other, on either the h-file or the f8 square, the back rank, checkmate that king. And that is a very useful tool to practice opposition. Hope you enjoyed that. Stay tuned for more. Cheers.